Never go near her, they said, but the alien queen chose to sit beside me. It was humanity's greatest achievement in space exploration. A research hub meant to study distant planets, alien life, and the mysteries of the universe. Yet despite all its technology, there was one presence aboard the station that filled every human heart with unease: the Arrakith Queen. Her chamber was at the very center of the station, surrounded by layers of reinforced glass and high-energy force fields. No ordinary visitor could enter. Scientists, engineers, and officers had all been warned the moment they arrived. Never go near her, the senior researchers said again and again. She is unlike any life form you have ever met. Approach at your own risk. Curiosity alone could cost you your life. The words sounded almost ritualistic now, repeated so often that new crew members felt the weight of generations of fear before they even saw her. They whispered stories among themselves in the halls, tales of entire alien species disappearing at her glance, of minds bending under her thought alone. Kieran, a young engineer, had joined the station only 2 months ago. He had heard the warnings, of course, and he respected them. But curiosity burned in his chest like a quiet fire. He was not reckless. He had grown up studying machines and humans, always drawn to understanding how things worked, how systems connected, how people thought. And somehow that curiosity was now focused on the Queen. He had seen her once from the observation deck, a faint silhouette through the layers of reinforced glass. She was massive, her form shifting and glimmering like liquid light. Her scales caught every ray of light in strange colors that humans had no names for. And her eyes, he would never forget those eyes, deep pools that seemed to hold the wisdom of the stars themselves. The crew called her dangerous. But Kieran felt something else when he looked at her, something like recognition. He could not explain it, and he tried not to think about it. He busied himself with repairing solar arrays and calibrating communication systems, telling himself that his fascination was nothing more than imagination. Yet that night, sleep eluded him. The corridors were quiet, and the low hum of the station had a steady rhythm that both calmed and unnerved him. He wandered, almost unconsciously, toward the Queen's chamber. He paused at the outer observation glass, heart pounding. There she was, floating, or perhaps sitting, it was hard to tell, in her fluid form in the center of her chamber. She seemed smaller somehow, less threatening than the stories suggested. Her luminescent body pulsed gently, as if breathing. And then slowly she turned her gaze toward him. Kieran froze. Every warning he had ever heard echoed in his mind, every story of fear and death, every cautionary tale. But in that gaze he did not see menace. He saw awareness. She was watching him. For a long moment they simply looked at each other. The Queen's presence was heavy, almost tangible, pressing against the glass that separated them. Yet it was not oppressive. It was curious, interested. She shifted slightly, a ripple of light running along her body. Kieran's breath caught. He was aware of every sound, the hum of the station, the distant clanging of pipes, even the faint heartbeat in his ears. He realized that he had been holding his breath without noticing. And then she did something no human had ever seen before. Slowly, deliberately, she moved toward the edge of her chamber, her massive form pressing against the force field. Kieran's pulse raced. It was an impossible thought, yet it filled him entirely. She was reaching out. He swallowed hard, stepping back slightly. I should not be here, he whispered to himself. But something inside him refused to obey caution. He felt drawn inexplicably to this being. He could not turn away, even though every fiber of his being screamed at him to leave. Over the next few days, Kieran found excuses to be near her chamber as often as possible. He watched her, studied the way her body glimmered and moved, and tried to imagine what she was thinking. The crew noticed his fascination. "Careful, Kieran," one of the senior engineers warned. "You don't want to get too close. You know what they say, she is not human, she does not think like us. She could destroy you without meaning to." "I know," Kieran said softly, avoiding their eyes. "But I can't just ignore her. There is something there, something I need to understand." Even as he spoke, he felt a thrill of fear. Understanding the Queen was dangerous, perhaps even impossible, but he could not stop himself. It was during one of these long, quiet observations that the first unusual incident occurred. Kieran was checking the calibration of the observation glass sensors when the Queen shifted in a way that no human could predict. The lights in the chamber dimmed for a moment, then brightened. A low hum filled the room, vibrating in sync with the station's engines. Kieran stumbled back. The instruments on his console were going haywire, readings jumping from one extreme to another. His instincts screamed at him to leave, to alert security, to do anything but stay. But he stayed. Then, as suddenly as it began, the disturbance stopped. The chamber returned to normal. Kieran looked up. The Queen was sitting, or hovering, just a few meters away, as if she had intentionally drawn him into the moment. And then, shockingly, she tilted her head slightly, a gesture that was almost human in its subtlety. He felt something shift inside him. Fear, yes, but also awe, and an unshakable sense that she had chosen him, in some way he could not yet understand. The following day, the senior scientists called a meeting. They were tense, voices tight with anxiety. "Kieran has been observed spending too much time near the Queen," one of them said. "This is dangerous. She is unpredictable. You must keep your distance." Kieran listened quietly, his hands resting on the table. He nodded even as his mind raced. He wanted to tell them that he could communicate with her, not with words, but with understanding, but the words would sound crazy. None of them had the patience or courage to see what he was beginning to sense. Over the next week, he experimented carefully. He would approach the observation deck at different times, speak softly, hum tunes he remembered from Earth, and watch her reactions. At first, she was still unreadable, but gradually she began to respond. A ripple of light here, a pulse there, almost imperceptible to anyone not paying attention. One evening, Kieran stayed later than usual. The station lights were dim, casting long shadows along the metal floors. The Queen's chamber was quiet, almost serene. He had brought a small device, a translator prototype meant to detect patterns in alien communication. He placed it near the glass, and to his astonishment, the readings spiked in unusual ways. The Queen's attention was entirely on him. She tilted her head, shimmered, and in the strangest moment pressed a glowing appendage against the glass directly in front of him. It was a gesture, an invitation, or perhaps a test. Kieran felt a shiver run down his spine. He understood instinctively that she was acknowledging him. She was curious about him, and in some way she had chosen him from among the dozens of humans aboard the station. The warnings echoed in his mind. Never go near her. But in that instant, Kieran realized that the stories were only half the truth. The Queen was dangerous, yes. She was powerful and ancient, and she could destroy without effort. But she was also intelligent, aware, and perhaps even capable of recognizing the value in human traits, traits she could not understand in other species. As the hours passed, he continued to watch, fascinated. And though he did not yet fully understand why, he felt a sense of destiny. Something larger than the station, larger than himself, was at work. By the end of the week, Kieran had made a decision. He would no longer hide behind the walls of fear. He would learn, slowly and carefully, to bridge the distance between himself and the Queen. Humanity had always been cautious, yes, but it had also always been bold. And he realized, with a strange mixture of fear and excitement, that perhaps humanity's boldness was exactly what she had been waiting for. The Queen had chosen to notice him, and that choice would change everything. The orbital station Helios 9 was quiet that night, almost unnaturally so. The hum of the engines filled every corridor, a steady reminder that life in space never truly stopped. Kieran moved carefully, his footsteps soft on the metallic floor. He carried no tools, no gadgets, only his presence and the weight of his curiosity. He had spent the past week observing the Queen from a distance, studying the subtle changes in her light patterns, the way her body shimmered and pulsed. Every movement she made seemed deliberate, almost thoughtful. And yet no one aboard the station had seen her act in any way that could be considered friendly. Still, Kieran felt a pull he could not resist. Something told him that tonight might be different. Something told him that she would choose to act, not merely observe. The observation deck was deserted. Most crew members had returned to their quarters, their minds weary from constant schedules and endless data reports. Kieran took a deep breath and approached the glass of her chamber. The Queen was there, as always, floating in the center. But tonight she moved differently. Her body shifted, ripples of light spreading in patterns Kieran had never seen. It was almost as if she was aware he was near, as if she had been waiting. He swallowed hard. I am here," he whispered softly, not expecting a response. Then it happened. The Queen moved closer to the force field that separated them. Her massive form, impossible to define in human terms, shimmered and twisted. A soft glow emanated from her body, bathing the observation deck in colors that Kieran could not name. And then, impossibly, the force field dimmed in one corner, a faint ripple appearing like water disturbed by a stone. Kieran's heart raced. He knew the station was not malfunctioning. He knew this was deliberate. The Queen had chosen to open a path, however small, to allow him closer. Kieran hesitated, fear and wonder warring inside him. He had been warned constantly, never go near her. And yet, every instinct in his body urged him forward. Slowly, cautiously, he stepped closer. The Queen extended one of her glowing appendages, hovering in the empty space before him. Kieran reached out, trembling until his fingers were nearly touching the shimmering light. A warmth ran through him, not physical but emotional, a sensation that told him she meant no harm. He blinked, overwhelmed by the realization. She was communicating without words. She was speaking directly to his mind, not with speech but with impressions, images, and feelings. It was subtle, like a gentle breeze brushing against his consciousness, but it was enough. He could feel her curiosity, her attention focused entirely on him. She was learning just as he had been learning. And in that moment, Kieran understood something profound. The Queen did not see him as weak. She did not see him as prey. She saw him as remarkable. Hours passed, though time on the station was fluid and difficult to measure. Kieran and the Queen remained near each other, separated only by the faint barrier of the force field. He observed her patterns, the rhythm of her light pulses, and he began to mimic them, creating a silent dialogue. At first it was tentative, a flicker of light here, a pulse there. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, they began to synchronize. Kieran felt a thrill of discovery unlike anything he had ever known. The other crew members would have panicked if they had seen him. They would have assumed danger. But Kieran sensed something deeper. The Queen's choice to engage with him was not random. It was deliberate. She had selected him from among all humans aboard the station, and she was teaching him, in her own way, how to communicate with her species. Days passed in this delicate dance. Kieran spent every spare moment near the observation deck. He carried small tools to monitor her energy patterns, notebooks to sketch the rhythms of her light, and a simple device that recorded frequencies too subtle for the human ear. The Queen responded to all of it. She changed the colors of her body, shifted in complex patterns, and sometimes hovered so close that Kieran could feel the faint pressure of her presence through the glass. It was not threatening. It was intimate in a way that transcended physical touch. One evening, as the station rotated slowly above Earthra, a storm of cosmic radiation swept past them. Lights flickered, alarms rang softly in the distance, but the Queen remained calm. Kieran approached, heart-pounding, and instinctively raised his hand. She mirrored him, extending her appendage toward the glass. Their movements synchronized perfectly, like two dancers in perfect harmony. Kieran felt a surge of confidence. If the crew could only see this, they would understand that the Queen was not a mindless threat. She was intelligent, aware, capable of judgment and discernment, and in some inexplicable way she trusted him. That night, Kieran dared to try something new. He placed his hand against the glass as if to reach her directly. She mirrored him, pressing her glowing form to the same spot. The force field vibrated faintly, and for a moment, Kieran felt as though the barrier between them was nearly gone. He realized then that this was more than curiosity. The Queen was testing him, measuring his courage, his patience, his ability to connect without fear. Humans had always been bold in ways that other species were not. Perhaps that was why she had noticed him. Over the next few days, Kieran began to notice changes in her behavior. She would follow him with her gaze when he moved through the observation deck. She responded more quickly to his attempts at synchronization. And most surprisingly, she seemed to anticipate his actions, as if she could sense his intentions before he acted. This realization both thrilled and terrified him. The Queen was ancient, her species far older than humanity, and yet she was not distant. She was present, aware, and engaged, and she had chosen him to bridge the gap between their species. Kieran began to speak softly to her, though he knew she could not hear in the human sense. "I don't know if you can understand me," he said one night, "but I want to learn, I want to understand you." The Queen responded not with words, but with a pulse of light that spread across her entire body. It was bright, warm, and somehow affirming. Kieran's heart raced. She had acknowledged him. She had answered. Over the following week, the pattern of their interaction became routine. Kieran would approach the observation deck each night. The Queen would respond, sometimes with small movements, sometimes with complex patterns of light. And slowly, they began to understand each other. Other crew members noticed subtle changes as well. The senior scientists could not explain it, but the Queen's energy readings were stabilizing. The instruments that had once gone haywire in her presence now functioned normally when Kieran was near. Whispers began to circulate among the crew. "He is the only one she tolerates," one engineer said. "I've never seen anything like it." Kieran ignored the whispers. He focused on the Queen, on the bond they were forming. He understood in a way that no one else did that this was humanity at its best. Humans were adaptable, curious, and fearless in ways that even ancient species could not fully comprehend. And perhaps that was exactly what the Queen saw in him. One night, as Kieran watched, the Queen did something he had never expected. She shifted fully toward the glass, her glowing form pressing close to his hand. Then, with a movement that was deliberate and controlled, she began to lower herself to the floor of the chamber, a gesture that mimicked human sitting. Kieran's breath caught. She was sitting beside him, or at least she was attempting to mirror the human concept of sitting. It was the closest thing to a personal connection he had ever seen from an alien species. And in that moment, all the warnings, all the fear, all the stories of danger seemed distant and irrelevant. The Queen had chosen him. For hours, Kieran simply observed, not daring to move, not daring to speak. He could feel her attention, her curiosity, her intelligence focused entirely on him. And for the first time, he felt a profound sense of purpose. Humanity was often cautious, sometimes timid, but here, in this quiet chamber above the planet, humans had done what no other species could. They had earned the trust of the Arrakith Queen. As the night passed, Kieran felt an unfamiliar warmth of confidence. The Queen's presence was no longer terrifying. It was inspiring. It was a reminder of what humans could achieve when they approached the unknown with courage and curiosity rather than fear. And though no one else could understand the depth of this connection, Kieran knew it was real. The Queen had chosen him. She had recognized something in him that others had overlooked, and perhaps, in doing so, she had recognized something in all of humanity. From that night onward, Kieran's life aboard Helios 9 changed forever. No longer was he simply an engineer. He had become the bridge between two species, a human chosen by one of the universe's most ancient and powerful beings. And the real adventure, was only beginning. Days passed aboard Helios 9, each one blending into the next as Kieran's connection with the Arrakith Queen grew stronger. The station, normally filled with bustling crews and constant activity, now seemed quieter when he was near the Queen's chamber. It was as if time itself slowed in her presence, allowing him to observe and understand her in ways he could not have imagined. Kieran had developed a routine. Every night when the station's lights dimmed and most of the crew retreated to their quarters, he would approach the observation deck. The Queen would be there, waiting, her body shimmering with faint pulses of light. Sometimes she would hover midair, her massive form twisting and flowing like liquid glass. Other times, she would lower herself to the chamber floor, mimicking a human-like posture that made Kieran's heart pound. Their communication was still silent, subtle, but it was growing. Kieran had learned to notice the smallest changes in her light patterns, her movements, and the vibrations that sometimes rippled through the force field. A sudden spike in brightness could mean curiosity. A slow, rhythmic pulse could mean calm or recognition. And when she extended a glowing appendage toward him, it was always an invitation. One night, Kieran tried something new. He placed a small device near the glass, an analyzer designed to detect patterns in energy and light frequencies. He had hoped it might provide insight into her communication style. To his astonishment, the device responded immediately, capturing pulses and vibrations in complex sequences. The Queen's attention was entirely on him. She shifted closer, her form wrapping around the device in a fluid motion. Kieran felt a thrill of understanding. She wanted him to observe, to learn, and perhaps to teach her something in return. Over the next few days, Kieran began experimenting carefully. He mimicked her light patterns with a handheld projector, creating pulses and sequences that resembled her own. At first, her reactions were minimal, just faint ripples across her body. But gradually she responded more clearly, sometimes echoing his sequences, sometimes introducing new patterns of her own. It was a form of dialogue, not words, not language as humans knew it, but a rhythm, a pattern, a conversation of light and movement. Kieran realized that she was teaching him, just as he was teaching her. Each interaction brought them closer, deepening the connection in ways that no one else aboard the station could comprehend. Other crew members began to notice the changes. The senior scientists had long warned against approaching the Queen, yet the instruments now displayed stable energy readings when Kieran was nearby. They exchanged puzzled glances. "It's almost as if she trusts him," one said quietly. Kieran ignored their speculation. Trust was a delicate thing, especially between species separated by millennia of evolution and understanding. He focused entirely on the Queen, observing, learning, and attempting to respond in kind. One evening, during a particularly quiet rotation of the station, Kieran noticed something remarkable. The Queen's movements had become more expressive, more intentional. She began forming shapes in the air, arcs and spirals of glowing light that resembled symbols. Kieran studied them carefully, attempting to replicate the patterns. To his surprise, she responded with subtle shifts, almost like approval. And then, in a moment that left him breathless, she produced a series of intricate patterns that seemed to convey emotion, curiosity, joy, caution, and perhaps even admiration. Kieran realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. The Queen, a being far older and wiser than any human, was beginning to share her thoughts and feelings. And she had chosen him, not just as an observer, but as a participant. He began to experiment further. Using simple gestures, soft sounds, and subtle movements, he tried to convey human concepts: hope, trust, curiosity, and resilience. The Queen responded each time, sometimes with rapid pulses, sometimes with slow, deliberate glows. It was imperfect, yet effective. For the first time, Kieran understood the true nature of her interest. She was not merely observing humans from a distance. She was trying to understand them, to recognize their strengths, and perhaps even to learn from them. The realization filled him with pride. Humanity had always been underestimated by other species, reckless, fragile, and often short-sighted. But here, aboard Helios 9, humans were proving something fundamental. Courage, curiosity, and empathy could bridge even the widest gaps. The Queen's curiosity grew more evident with each passing day. She began to anticipate Kieran's actions, reacting before he even moved. It was as if she could sense his intentions, as if some part of her mind was aligned with his. Kieran felt both awe and humility. He was standing at the edge of something larger than himself, larger than humanity, a connection with an intelligence older than stars. One day, during a routine system check, Kieran noticed a sudden fluctuation in the Queen's energy field. The instruments recorded spikes far beyond normal levels, and alarms briefly sounded. Kieran froze. Was she in danger, or was this a test? He approached the glass cautiously, and the Queen shifted toward him. Her glowing form pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Kieran extended his hand to the glass once more, and she mirrored him, pressing her appendage gently against the surface. A warmth ran through him, not physical but emotional. He understood then that she was communicating reassurance. She trusted him. She was sharing a moment of understanding, of connection. That night, Kieran stayed longer than usual. He watched the Queen, fascinated by the subtle nuances of her behavior. She moved with a grace that seemed impossible, her body flowing like liquid light. And yet, beneath the alien form, he sensed intelligence, emotion, and even humor. He realized that the warnings of the crew, while not false, had been incomplete. Yes, the Queen was powerful, ancient, and potentially dangerous. But she was also capable of understanding, of connection, and of recognition. And she had chosen him to witness and participate in that understanding. Kieran began to notice changes in himself as well. His fear diminished, replaced by curiosity and determination. He approached the Queen not as a cautious human, but as a bridge between species. He recognized the value of his own traits, creativity, empathy, and the willingness to take risks as tools to connect with her. The other crew members remained wary. They whispered about Kieran, about his unusual relationship with the Queen. But Kieran paid little attention. He knew that what he was experiencing was rare, perhaps unprecedented, and he understood that this connection could redefine humanity's place among the stars. One evening, a minor station malfunction forced Kieran to act quickly. The communication array in the observation deck began to fail, and without intervention, the instruments tracking the Queen could have been compromised. Kieran moved swiftly, recalibrating the system while keeping one eye on the Queen. She observed silently, her body pulsing softly. And then, in a gesture that took Kieran by surprise, she emitted a rapid sequence of light patterns directly toward the sensors. The devices stabilized immediately, functioning normally once more. Kieran stared, astonished. She had assisted him without touching the machinery, simply by manipulating her own energy. It was a small act, yet it demonstrated something profound. She trusted him, and he had earned her cooperation. The incident sparked new possibilities. Kieran realized that the Queen's abilities could be harnessed to assist humans, not to harm them. And more importantly, he understood that she had chosen to recognize humanity's ingenuity and potential. Over the following week, Kieran and the Queen's interactions became more complex. He introduced new sequences, subtle variations in light and sound, testing her responses. She adapted quickly, matching his patterns and introducing new ones. Their silent dialogue was evolving into a sophisticated form of communication that no other human had achieved. Kieran felt exhilaration and responsibility in equal measure. He was not merely a participant in this connection. He was a pioneer. Humanity had always been brave, but now, through his actions, he was proving that humans could connect with beings far older and more powerful than themselves. One night, as Kieran sat near the observation deck, the Queen shifted closer than ever before. Her glowing form filled the space, and she mirrored his posture, lowering herself to the chamber floor in a way that mimicked human sitting. For hours, they remained in this silent companionship. Kieran felt a profound sense of understanding. The Queen was not only aware of him, but she was engaging with him fully. She was teaching him, learning from him, and recognizing the unique qualities of humanity. And in that moment, Kieran understood the truth. The Queen's choice to engage with him was more than curiosity. She had recognized courage, empathy, and ingenuity, the very traits that defined humans. And she had chosen him as a representative of all of humanity, a bridge between species. From that night onward, Kieran's sense of purpose aboard Helios 9 deepened. He was no longer merely an engineer performing routine tasks. He was a messenger, a learner, and a participant in one of the most extraordinary connections ever witnessed in human history. The Queen had chosen him. And through that choice, she had recognized the potential within humanity, a potential that could change the course of history, both on Earth and among the stars. The orbital station Helios 9 drifted silently above Erythra, bathed in the soft glow of the distant sun. Kieran had grown accustomed to the rhythms of life aboard the station, the constant hum of machinery, the faint vibration of engines, the slow rotation of observation decks. But tonight, a different tension filled the air. The monitors flickered faintly, picking up anomalies in the station's energy field. Cosmic radiation, stronger than usual, swept past the station in waves. Kieran noticed the warning lights blinking, red and insistent. These storms were rare, unpredictable, and dangerous. Even the Queen, usually calm and unyielding, seemed affected. Her body shimmered with unusual patterns, light pulsing erratically, reflecting the disturbance outside. Kieran's heart raced. He knew that if the radiation reached the station's core systems, critical failures could occur. Communications could be lost, life support might falter, and the Queen's containment field, though strong, could weaken. The entire station could be at risk. He ran down the corridor toward the observation deck, careful but quick. His hands flew over consoles, recalibrating sensors and stabilizing power conduits. The alarms blared and the station's lights flickered as the storm intensified. The Queen shifted in her chamber, floating closer to the force field. Her glowing body pulsed rapidly, her light flickering in sharp, sudden bursts. Kieran realized she was not frightened, but aware. She was observing him, sensing his movements, and perhaps trying to understand how he intended to handle the crisis. Kieran took a deep breath. "We have to stabilize the station," he whispered softly, though she could not hear him in the usual sense. "I don't know if we can do it alone, but I have to try." The Queen responded almost immediately. A wave of light surged through her body, streaming toward the force field in patterns that corresponded with the station's energy grids. Kieran watched in awe. Her power was immense, but it required coordination. She could influence systems, but she could not control them entirely. She needed him to act, to guide the station's machinery, to combine human skill with alien power. The station shuddered as a wave of radiation struck the outer hull. Instruments went haywire for a brief moment before Kieran stabilized them. Sweat ran down his forehead. "It's not enough," he muttered. "We need more control." The Queen pulsed again, this time forming intricate patterns in the air, arcs, spirals, sequences that seemed to communicate a solution. Kieran studied them carefully. He realized she was directing him, guiding his hands to the right panels, the right circuits. He followed her signals, connecting human systems to her energy fields in ways that had never been attempted before. The instruments responded. The monitors stabilized. Life support systems hummed normally once more, yet the storm was far from over. Another, stronger wave of cosmic radiation approached, larger than the previous. Kieran's pulse quickened. "We have one chance," he said to himself. "We must synchronize completely." He took a deep breath and focused entirely on the Queen. He mimicked her patterns, sending energy pulses through the station's conduits that matched the rhythms of her light. The Queen responded instantly, adjusting her own output to complement his. Together, human ingenuity and alien power created a rhythm that was almost musical, flowing through the station like a lifeline. For hours, they worked in perfect synchrony. Kieran felt his heart pounding, sweat soaking his uniform, but he could not stop. He could feel the Queen's attention on him, her immense intelligence guiding his every move. And in that guidance, he found confidence. Finally, the strongest wave of radiation struck the station. The force was immense, rattling the metal hull and causing alarms to blare. Kieran's fingers flew over the controls, following the Queen's subtle signals. The energy fields bent and shimmered, absorbing the brunt of the radiation. Lights danced across the observation deck as the Queen's glow intensified, pulsing in perfect harmony with Kieran's actions. The storm passed as suddenly as it had arrived. The station's system stabilized. Alarms ceased. The monitors returned to normal. Kieran sank to his knees, exhausted but exhilarated. The Queen lowered herself to the chamber floor, mimicking a gesture of relief, and Kieran felt a surge of understanding. She had participated, she had acted, she had trusted him. Together, they had faced a danger that neither could have overcome alone. Over the following days, Kieran and the Queen reflected on their shared experience, not with words, but through subtle patterns of light and movement. He realized that this storm had been a test, not merely of their abilities, but of their connection. The Queen had chosen him for a reason. She had recognized in him qualities that her species valued: courage, quick thinking, empathy, and the ability to act under pressure. The crew noticed the change as well. Energy readings around the Queen stabilized in ways they could not explain. Instruments that once flickered in her presence now functioned normally. Kieran's relationship with the Queen was no longer a source of fear. It was a source of hope. Kieran understood that humans had something unique to offer. While other species might rely on sheer strength or ancient power, humans had creativity, adaptability, and resilience. These traits had allowed him to synchronize with the Queen, to complement her power with his own understanding. And in doing so, they had saved the station. The Queen's interest in Kieran grew more apparent. She began to anticipate his movements, responding before he even acted. She introduced new patterns of light, sequences more complex than ever, challenging him to match them. Kieran welcomed the challenge, realizing that it was not merely for communication. It was a form of learning for both of them. One night after the systems had stabilized completely, Kieran approached the observation deck and found the Queen waiting. Her glow was steady, warm, and almost comforting. She lowered herself to the chamber floor once more, a gesture that had become familiar. Kieran sat beside her, feeling a strange sense of equality. He was a human, young and inexperienced, and she was an ancient being of immense power. And yet in that moment they were partners. They had faced a challenge together, and through their collaboration, they had achieved something extraordinary. He reached out, not touching her, but aligning his hands with the light patterns she formed. For hours, they remained in this silent communion. Kieran felt a profound sense of understanding. The Queen was not merely curious. She was engaged, invested, and aware of the value of human traits. This realization brought a new confidence to Kieran. Humanity had often been underestimated, seen as fragile or reckless. Yet here, above Earthra, humans had demonstrated qualities that even an ancient species could recognize and respect. Courage, creativity, empathy, and the ability to adapt under pressure were traits that defined them. And the Queen had acknowledged them through her choice to engage with him. Kieran knew that this was only the beginning. The storm had tested not only the station's systems, but the bond between human and alien. And the success of their collaboration had proven that humans were capable of extraordinary things. In the days that followed, Kieran continued to explore the Queen's communication patterns, pushing the limits of understanding. She responded with increasing complexity, introducing new sequences, rhythms, and flows of light. Each interaction was a lesson, a challenge, and a confirmation of the connection they shared. The crew observed silently, no longer fearful but intrigued. Kieran's relationship with the Queen was changing perceptions aboard the station. Humans had always been cautious, careful, and sometimes underestimated. But now they were proving that they could match even the oldest, most powerful species in intelligence, creativity, and resilience. One evening, as the station rotated slowly above the planet, Kieran sat quietly near the observation deck, reflecting on everything that had happened. The Queen hovered nearby, her light pulsing gently, a quiet rhythm that resonated with his own heartbeat. He realized that their partnership had not only stabilized the station, but had also demonstrated a deeper truth. Humans were capable of connecting across species, bridging gaps that seemed impossible, and achieving things that no one had thought possible. The Queen had chosen him for a reason. She had recognized in him, and in humanity, the courage, intelligence, and empathy that set them apart. And in doing so, she had opened a path for understanding, collaboration, and perhaps even friendship. Kieran felt a surge of determination. This was only the beginning. The universe was vast, full of unknown dangers and ancient mysteries. But humans had something unique, the ability to face the unknown with courage, creativity, and heart. And with the Queen by his side, he knew they could face whatever challenges awaited. The station was quiet once more, the storm passed, and the stars outside twinkled like distant beacons. Kieran gazed at the Queen, understanding for the first time the full meaning of her choice. She had not only selected him, but she had chosen to recognize humanity itself, a species capable of rising to challenges, building bridges, and inspiring even the oldest and most powerful beings in the galaxy. And as he sat beside her, the soft glow of her presence reflecting in his eyes, Kieran understood something profound. The universe had tested them, and together human and Queen had passed. The adventure was far from over. But humanity had proven itself in ways no one could have imagined. The orbital station Helios 9 was quiet in the early hours, its metal frame floating silently above Earthra. The cosmic storm had passed, leaving behind a sense of calm and clarity. For Kieran, the days since the storm had been filled with reflection, learning, and growing understanding of the Arakath Queen. Every night their silent dialogues, of light, patterns, and energy pulses, had strengthened, weaving a bond that no human had ever shared with an alien being before. Kieran sat near the observation deck, watching the Queen as she hovered gracefully in her chamber. Her light pulsed slowly, almost like a heartbeat, and he felt a strange comfort in that rhythm. She had changed since their first encounter. The erratic energy, the uncertainty, had given way to a calm, deliberate awareness. She was no longer just observing him. She was participating fully, engaging in a dialogue that transcended words and species. The other crew members had begun to notice the bond as well. Energy readings stabilized when Kieran was near. Instruments that once flickered in her presence now functioned normally. Subtle signs of trust had appeared in her behavior. She mirrored his movements, responded to his signals, and even seemed to anticipate his actions. The senior scientists, once wary and cautious, watched in awe. Humanity, through Kieran, had achieved what no other species had managed. The Queen had chosen to recognize them. Kieran understood the significance. The Queen's choice was not just about him. She had seen qualities in humans, courage, empathy, adaptability, and ingenuity, that had earned her respect. These traits, ordinary yet extraordinary, defined humanity, and she had chosen to acknowledge them, bridging a gap between species that had seemed impossible to cross. That night, a quiet tension filled the station. Kieran approached the observation deck and found the Queen already waiting, her glowing form steady and bright. For a moment, they simply regarded each other. Words were unnecessary. In her gaze, he saw recognition, curiosity, and something else, a willingness to connect beyond fear or caution. Kieran extended his hand toward the glass, and the queen mirrored him. Her glowing appendage hovered near his fingers, separated only by the transparent barrier. A surge of energy pulsed through him, not painful but profound. It was as if the queen was communicating approval, signaling that the next step in their bond had arrived. He took a deep breath and began to convey, through subtle gestures and patterns of light from his small projector, concepts that were uniquely human: cooperation, hope, and resilience. The queen responded immediately, her energy pulsing in complementary sequences, her form shifting in ways that suggested understanding. The dialogue continued for hours, growing more intricate with every exchange. Kieran realized that this was no longer a simple communication exercise. The queen was teaching him, learning from him, and perhaps even evaluating humanity as a whole. Each pattern, each pulse, conveyed meaning. And Kieran, for the first time, felt confident in his ability to interpret her intentions. In the following days, he introduced more complex sequences, testing her responses. The queen adapted quickly, forming new patterns, introducing subtle variations that challenged him. It was a test, but not a hostile one. She was evaluating, yes, but also guiding. Kieran sensed that she was assessing human potential, not just his own, but humanity's. One evening, the station's monitoring systems detected unusual activity near Earthra. Reports came in of a previously unknown asteroid cluster heading toward the planet's orbit. The station was safe, but the planet below and potentially future human settlements were at risk. Kieran's mind raced. This was a situation that demanded both human ingenuity and the Queen's extraordinary abilities. He approached her chamber immediately. "We may need to act," he said softly, knowing she could sense his intentions. She responded with a ripple of light, her body pulsing in rapid sequences. Kieran understood. She was willing to help, but only if he could coordinate with her. Working together, human skill and alien power became a seamless team. Kieran guided the station's instruments, calculated trajectories, and activated defensive systems, while the Queen extended her energy to manipulate gravitational fields, nudging the asteroids off their course. Their synchronization was perfect. Hours passed in tense focus. Every pulse of her light matched his adjustments to the systems. Every sequence he initiated was echoed and enhanced by her. Together, they created a rhythm that reshaped the cluster's path, sending the asteroids harmlessly into space. When the danger had passed, Kieran sank to his knees, exhausted but elated. The Queen hovered nearby, her glowing form calm once more. She lowered herself to the chamber floor as if to sit beside him, a gesture that had become familiar and comforting. It was then that Kieran realized the full scope of what had happened. Through their combined effort, humans and the Queen had not only averted disaster, but had proven the unique strengths of humanity. Courage, creativity, and empathy had made the impossible possible. And the Queen had recognized these traits in him, and by extension in all humans. The senior scientists entered the observation deck cautiously, their faces a mix of awe and disbelief. "Kieran, we've never seen anything like this," one said. "The Queen, she trusts you." Kieran nodded, a quiet pride filling him. "She has chosen to recognize humanity," he said softly, "and we've just proven why." The Queen's light pulsed slowly, almost as if in agreement. Kieran understood the subtle message. She had not only acknowledged him, but had accepted humans as worthy, capable, and reliable partners. Over the following days, Kieran worked to deepen the connection. He introduced sequences of energy that conveyed hope, trust, and collaboration. The Queen responded with increasing complexity, forming patterns that were expressive, almost artistic. Their silent dialogue became a form of shared understanding, transcending language, culture, and species. The crew began to understand the implications. Humanity had always been cautious, often underestimated by older species. But here, aboard Helios 9, they had demonstrated qualities that even an ancient, powerful being could respect. Humans were capable of innovation, bravery, and empathy that could rival the wisdom of civilizations older than the stars. One evening, as Kieran sat near the observation deck, the Queen hovered close, her glowing form reflecting in the glass. He reached out instinctively, aligning his hands with the patterns she formed. For a long moment, they remained in silent companionship. Then, in a movement that surprised him, the queen extended her appendage through a small ripple in the force field. Kieran hesitated, then mirrored her. The sensation was extraordinary. Though they did not touch in a physical sense, the energy flowed between them, a bridge of understanding, trust, and recognition. Kieran realized that this was more than communication. It was acknowledgement, a mutual agreement that humans and the Queen could work together, learn from each other, and respect each other's strengths. The station had become a symbol of possibility. If humans could connect with the Queen, then perhaps they could reach other civilizations, build alliances, and explore the universe not as conquerors, but as partners and innovators. Kieran felt the weight of this realization, but also the thrill. Humanity had always been bold, sometimes reckless, but always curious. And now their curiosity had been rewarded. The Queen's light dimmed and pulsed in a slow, steady rhythm, a sign of calm approval. Kieran understood this final gesture. She had recognized him fully, not as a human, not as an engineer, but as a representative of humanity itself. And she had made a choice, to form a bond, to acknowledge the value of humans, and to establish a bridge between their species. The senior scientists, now fully aware of the significance, looked on in silence. They had spent their careers studying alien species, learning their behaviors, and preparing for potential threats. And yet none had witnessed a connection like this, a moment where human courage, empathy, and intelligence had been recognized by an ancient, powerful being. Kieran stood, feeling both humble and proud. "We have a chance," he said softly, addressing the Queen though she could not hear in the usual sense. "A chance to show what humans can do, not just for ourselves, but for the universe." The Queen responded with a slow, steady pulse, almost as if agreeing. Kieran smiled. He knew that this was only the beginning. Humans and the Queen had faced storms, threats, and tests. And through every challenge, they had proven that courage, creativity, and empathy could bridge even the widest gaps. Over the next weeks, Kieran and the Queen worked to solidify their alliance. Through careful communication, training, and coordination, the station became a hub of shared understanding. Humans learned from her vast knowledge, while she adapted to their creativity and resilience. The station's crew no longer feared the Queen. Instead, they respected her and celebrated the bond she had formed with Kieran. They had witnessed something extraordinary, the acknowledgement of human potential by a species far older and more powerful than themselves. And on quiet nights, when the station drifted silently above Earthra, Kieran would sit beside her, watching the stars, feeling the rhythm of her light, and understanding that humanity had earned a place among the stars, not through force or fear, but through courage, empathy, and the willingness to connect. The Queen had chosen him, and through that choice she had recognized humanity. In that recognition lay hope, potential, and the promise of a new alliance, one that could shape the future of humans and aliens alike. Kieran felt the weight of responsibility and the thrill of possibility. The universe was vast, full of wonders and challenges, but humanity had proven itself. With courage, intelligence, and heart, they could face anything. And as the Queen pulsed beside him, a silent guardian and partner, Kieran understood something profound. The adventure was just beginning. Humanity had earned trust, respect, and recognition in ways no one had imagined. The stars outside the observation deck twinkled like distant beacons, and Kieran smiled. For the first time, he truly believed that humans could reach beyond fear, beyond caution, and into greatness. The Queen's glow brightened in a gentle pulse, acknowledging him once more. And in that light, Kieran knew that humanity had finally found a partner among the stars, a connection that would endure for generations. The alliance was born, silent but powerful, built not on weapons or conquest, but on trust, courage, and understanding. And in that bond, both human and alien would shape the universe together.